So actually, we got quite a shock this morning. A huge shock, actually, because the first three presentations and Ivar were talking about love and feelings and children and love to the children and challenges, feelings, feelings, feelings. And when Janar, he was on, I thought it was in Italy. I thought, how can this be Estonia? I thought it was different in Estonia, but obviously it's not. So we're very happy to be able today to talk about feelings and relationships and what we can do to make our schools even better. Next to me is Rasmus.
Hello.
And he used to be a school leader. That's very important to know. That's why he's got expensive clothes and look fantastic. He used to be a leader for a sports, that's a very long word, sports boarding school. He used to be a vice principal. That's a very long title. Vice principal of a sports boarding school.
Yeah.
So he did that for some years, and then he got tired of saying the title, so he moved on. Before that, he was a teacher in local schools in Copenhagen. And before that, he was studying to become a teacher. And when he was studying to become a teacher, a lot of men in Denmark, when they become around 35, 40 years old, they go into panic. They have to get a younger wife, or they have to go running, or they have to do an Ironman. So they run and they swim for, 50 kilometers or something, and they get lost in the woods. It's crazy. But instead of that, Rasmus decided to challenge himself on an even higher level. So he married a school teacher. And he is married to a school teacher, and he lives outside of Copenhagen. And he's also a writer, but I will not say anymore because it becomes a little too much now, I think. But he is married to a teacher, so I think he's a very courageous person.
All right, thank you for that presentation, Casper.
Yes.
This is Casper Rongsted. He's now 48 years old. Lives together with Mette and his 3 children. And Mette's parents are teachers.
Of course.
Casper has been working as a teacher in a public school and especially in special schools in Denmark with children with socially challenges. And Casper has for the last 15 years been an educational consultant. And together with me, we have this project we call the Nordic Schools, and we're traveling around in Europe and in Denmark and talking about the extraordinary good school systems we think we have in the Nordic countries.
And this began because we were at a party once and we talked to a parent. And she said to me, Casper, it's funny because you're talking about the schools that are doing very well, and that's how I feel too. I mean, my kids' school, it's a great school. It's a public school. It's in an area with all kinds of kids, and it's a great school. The teachers are great. The pedagogues are great. The assistants are great. We really like it. And then she said, but it's such a problem that all the other schools are doing so bad. So we talked about this and we said, what? How can it be true that every time we meet a parent, almost every time, they say, oh, the school is good, and then we had some problems and my kid was challenged, and then the teachers helped us and the pedagogues helped, and the school management, they helped us too. How can it be that people are quite positive about the schools? But then if you open a newspaper, which is very old-fashioned, but I'm 48, so I open my newspaper, or I go on the internet and I see the Danish national television, or I see the biggest newspapers in our country, they will write that the schools are pretty bad. Pretty bad. PISA, 28, 25, 22, not very good. And there was this survey last year saying that 89% of the lessons start on time. And then in the media, I think that's good news. 89% of every lesson in a Danish public school starts on time. That's difficult. You know that. If you're a teacher, you go from this room to this room, then you go here. You don't just go, because then you meet kids who are crying, who wants help, maybe even colleagues who want help. But still, 89% of the lessons start on time. I think it's a miracle. Now the newspapers, they did not see this as a miracle. They said 11% of the lessons are not starting on time. So that's the story. So that's Danish media for you. And we thought it cannot be true. I mean, we do not believe that PISA is the only measurement for how the schools are working. So we started to investigate and we made this project.
So why is our project relevant for you in this context? Well, when citizens and politicians and parents are talking about the school systems, it's very often about lifting the academic skills for the students. And that is, of course, very, very important. But what most politicians don't know, or at least don't talk about, is that the academic skills is also about relationships and the relations between the students and the teachers and the parents. And that is one of the things that we do extremely well in the Nordic countries. And that's where we're going to keep our focus today. I hope you will enjoy that. But first of all, let's start out in good old Denmark. We would like to present you for a little top 5 of good things in Denmark. It comes here. Number 1, the parents love the schools in Denmark. Recently, a report showed that 86% of the parents were very satisfied with the Danish schools. 86%. That's pretty good, isn't it?
And then there is a national survey, and 500,000 children were asked, how do you like school? 92%, this is really new, really new facts. 92% of the children like to go to school in Denmark. 92%. That's amazing. That should make international headlines, but it doesn't.
And in the international study ICCS, that shows how the students navigate in a democratic and in a political context, Denmark ends up in a first place. Well, together with Finland, but still on a first place.
And in some of the other surveys, we do very, very well. For example, Pearls, who talk about how well the kids read, we're up in the top 5. That's Denmark.
And last but not least, Denmark has, according to Columbia University's happiness measurements, several times been voted as the happiest nation in the world. Oh yeah, the happiest nation in the world, with just such a little paradise on earth. Can you feel it?
And this is why we come here to tell you what to do. Because we do everything right in Denmark. And I know that our flag in year around 1300 fell down in Estonia. But still, we are here to teach you about how to do like the Danes. How to speak Danish and how to be Danish. The problem is that if you take PISA seriously, and we really do, we will really stress that we take it very seriously, then Estonia is number 11. 11 in reading and mathematics. Whereas Denmark, as I said before, is mediocre, in the middle, 22, 24. We're not doing that well, I'm afraid.
There is also an increasing stress among the older students in the Danish schools, especially among the girls in 8th and 9th grades. They are really exposed in this matter.
And actually, we were very happy about breaking the bad social inheritance. It's not going that well these days, and the government actually just implemented a new politics saying that poor families should have less money, which is not so good, because every survey about that and all the science about that says that it's going to make the poor families and the kids who are behaving badly, it's going to make it worse for them. So.
And also, too many children need antidepressants in Denmark. Out of a population of 5.6 million people, 450,000 people need antidepressants. There is still a lot of work to be done in Denmark, unfortunately.
And last but not least, if you're a teacher in Denmark, we just had the new school reform. So the system was working, according to us at least, and a lot of international reports. The system was working, and then we needed reform. So they started by firing all the teachers and sent all the teachers home for a month and told all the teachers in Denmark, all the teachers, told them, if you want to come back, you will have to work more hours, and the pay is the same, but you have to work more hours. And you think, that could not happen in Denmark. No, it couldn't. I mean, that's crazy. How can that happen? But it did. So ask any teacher in Denmark, and they will tell you, oh, I love to be a teacher, but the school reform, oh. And that's a pity, because there are many good things in the school reform, many good things. But the working hours has been changed, so now the teachers have to be on the school all day long, which could be a problem.
So that was just a little facts about Denmark, some of our good things and some of our bad things. But let's just widen our focus now and talk about the Nordic countries. And we would like to ask you a question, do a little exercise with you. We brought this little question here. Why are the Nordic countries among the happiest nations in the world? Why are the Nordic countries among the happiest nations in the world? I would like to make you discuss for a few minutes with the lovely person that sits next to you. Just discuss that, and then we'll ask you what is the question, what is the answers for that, sorry. All right, hold it right there. Can we have some answers to our question? We are quite curious what you think about it. Just to make sure that everybody understands, we will make Ivar get this microphone around to all the wise answers.
But please feel free to answer in English.
Yeah, sure.
We know everybody speaks English, more or less.
All right, that's it. Over there.
We thought that maybe it's because the basic needs are covered, and then it's easier to be happy because you don't have to worry about those.
Because the basic needs is on. Yeah.
We thought that basically three reasons. One is historical. Like
Historical reason?
Yeah. No communism.
Oh yeah.
No war. Well, in the last 100 years or so.
Sure.
Neutrality in the Second World War. So then material stability, obviously.
Yeah.
And social benefits, good social security system. And short working hours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you ask Columbia University who's doing this, well, there are many surveys about happiness, but if you ask Columbia University, they will say what you said and what you said, so maybe they should call you next time. Maybe they will, actually.
So we discussed long tradition of democracy and also generations of children who have grown up with Andersen and Lindgren and Joe Jansson. It makes people happy, I think.
Yeah, especially Astrid Lindgren, I think. But she's Swedish, let's stress that.
She makes the world a little better.
Yeah, she does.
I think that, we know that it said that happiness is not the absence of problems, but the ability to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Nordic schools probably provide those tools, opportunities to deal with the problems when they arise.
Yeah, we agree on that one. That the Nordic schools make the tools for a happy life. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's Nordic countries have more created relations in families and social security and good relationship, as you described, parents, families, and also state. It's I don't know, some weeks ago, Minister of Education visited our school. He discussed with teachers, with students, no problems. It's regular in Nordic countries. It's no problem with state, family, and school. It's a same level or same line.
I think it's true, and I think what Esther said before, that in the Nordic countries, you think that the state is not your enemy, it's your friend. Some years ago, I spoke to a Spanish friend, and she said, "You're crazy in Denmark. You're crazy. You actually like the state, and some of you like to pay tax. Are you crazy? In Spain, I hate the state." And she was from Catalonia, you know, so she hated the state, and she hated the state. She was really into this. So I think that's true. There's a trust to the state that we actually grow up with.
And in fact, we have a very low corruption in Denmark. It is the country that have the least corruption in the whole world. So that's maybe why we trust the state. And also in general, we trust each other as citizens. A measurement from last year showed that 78% of the Danish people think that you can trust a person that you haven't met before. 78%, that's quite a lot.
And that being said, we have to remember that it is in the northern countries, Sweden who's taking a lot of refugees. Denmark takes some, Norway takes some, but Sweden, they do like this. They take, I think they took around 100,000 refugees last year, where Denmark took 20,000. So we believe in people, but obviously not all people, I think. There are many reasons. And when you ask Columbia University, you get a lot of different reasons for this. And some of the things have been said. And security is one of them. And the feeling of freedom, that it is possible to be doing something and then do something else. My wife, who's 21, no, she's 45. My wife is a landscape architect. And then for the last 7 years, she worked as a pedagogue because she became tired of drawing gardens. Then she thought, I'll do something else. And then she thought, I'll do something else with my life now. And then she applied to become, what do you call that in English? I don't know, conservating old materials. Anyway, she applied, and then they said, you can study here in 3 years. You have to wait for 3 years. So she waited for 3 years, and now she will begin to study again. And we can do that because there's a free school system. So she's not paying for studying. I mean, that's another thing which has not been mentioned. That in all of the Nordic countries, it's free to study. If you go to the school, if you go to university, it's free. If you go to England, for example, it's getting more and more expensive. And especially with the government they have now, they are not going to reduce the cost of studying. So where my friends in England 20 years ago, that it was free to study in England, it is not anymore. So I think it's one of the things that we should maintain. Another thing is the relationship building or forming relationships. And I think you're absolutely right that the relationships between the families, between the students, the pupils, the parents, and the school, and the teachers, and maybe even the state, we believe that it should be like this. I think you did like this. It should be eye to eye. Actually, when you work in Danish schools, you know that you have to work on 3 different levels as a teacher, to the parent and to the child. You have to work on a level which is higher, where you know what's the right thing to do, obviously. So you're the wiser one. Every teacher in the world will say, yeah, of course, I'm the teacher, I'm the wiser person. So there are things that I know, I have more knowledge than the other person. And then, which is a very Nordic thing, and I think you could obviously find it in Estonia too, you have to be on the same level as the one you're teaching. You have to understand what's going on in his or her head. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? So you have to get into their world and see the world with their eyes. I think you can say that about teaching in many, many worlds, in many countries. But one thing which is not normal in a lot of other countries, but which is very normal in the Nordic countries, is that the teacher also allows himself or herself to say to the child or to the parent, okay, there are some things I don't know that you know. So I will humble myself in front of you. I will say to this group, well, there are a lot of things I don't know, but maybe you know it. Now that is normal in Denmark, but that is not normal in Singapore, in China, in Hong Kong. And even it's not normal. We still try to participate in the same reports and the same service and all that. But it's so difficult to measure the relationship building. Now, to tell you a bit more about how we work with relationship building, I have invited a young man who's from the suburbs, the cold, grey, rainy suburbs of Copenhagen. And his name is Rasmus, and he's coming in right now.
Hello, I'm Rasmus, and I'm 12 years old. I live in the suburb of Copenhagen called Ballerup, and there's a lot of people who tells me it's an awful place to stay. But I don't think so. I like it there. That's where all my friends live, and we just hang out at the mall and eating French fries and drinking Coca-Cola. It is also much better than staying home with my dad, because he's a big, stupid idiot. He can't even hold on to his own woman, and he always tells me what to do and where to go. Last year he was divorced from my mother, and I had to go with him. So it's not very much fun to be me right now. But I started doing all kinds of things to piss him off, and it works out really good. For example, I started smoking. And I just blow the smoke right into his face, and it turns out all red, and he shouts at me and yells at me, and then I just leave. And right now, I'm on my way to two of my new friends, Dennis and Brian Willumsen. And Dennis is pretty sick in his head. Sometimes when I come to his home, he's listening to really loud music, and he's sitting making stupid things and saying, yeah, and I'm thinking, what's the matter with him? But if you think that Dennis is sick in his head, it's just because that you haven't met his older brother, Brian. He's a full-blooded psychopath. Even though I have known him for many years, I'm still a little bit afraid of him. Today we're going down to the school. They're waiting for me right now, and we're going to a party down at the school. And we are sitting 3 people on Brian's new moped. And I'm there on the back of his moped, and when we arrive to the school, we meet one of the teachers from the school. And it's Michael. And Michael is a pretty cool guy. I really like him, though he always question me all kind of stupid things, but I kind of like him. He's a cool guy. And he's standing down at the school at the gate, and then he says, hello guys, where have you got that moped from? And Brian is fast to say, it's just one that we borrowed. And then we just move on. And instead we go down to the smoking room underneath the school. And there is all the other lads, and they're having a lot of fun. And it's getting even more funny when we arrive, until there's suddenly a big, big bang. Boom! And the door is kicked up open, and in comes Simon, which is from a little town called Molo. And he's a big, big fellow. And with him, he brings Joachim from my own class. And Joachim has this long blonde hair, even though he's a boy. And Simon is holding in his long hair. And he enters the room with him, and then he shows us all a scissor. And then he shouts out loud, I think that little Joachim is going to have a haircut today. And unfortunately, he goes right over to me and gives me the scissor and says, well, come on, Rasmus, come on, do it. Come on, cut his hair. And I say, no, I can't do that. I get the scissor and I just don't want to do it. And I say, no, I can't. But I know I don't have a choice, because all the other lads around me are shouting at me that I have to do it. And at last I just decide to do it. So with shaking hands, I go down to Joachim. Woo! And I grab his hair and put the scissor all the way to his hair. But then Michael enters the room and shouts, stop, it's enough. And I throw the scissor away and I just freeze, and everybody else just leave the room. And there I stand. And I swear to God that Michael just went straight over to me, and he took me in my shoulders, and then he lifted, he lifted me up in straight arms. And then he sat me down on a chair. And then he said a lot of words that I really needed to hear. First of all, he told me that he had seen so many teenagers where they have started reacting like I did when their parents were divorced. And it was a very normal reaction. And second of all, he told me that he knew this feeling personally, because when he was a teenager, his parents was also getting divorced. So he knew exactly how I felt. And the last thing he told me, which surprised me very, very much, was that he told me that he was also started doing all kind of stupid things. He was starting stealing from shops. He was starting lying to his parents. He was starting skipping classes from school. And that really surprised me to hear that from a grown-up. And that day, I went home and I went straight up to my room and I locked the door and I sat down, and for the first time of my life, I was wondering a little bit about what to do with it. And all Michael's words were spinning around in my head, and for the first time I thought that maybe I could use some grown-ups for something.
Rasmus Schiellerup, ladies and gentlemen, from the suburbs of Copenhagen. Thank you. Now this is to show you philosophy and academic skills in one. So we have a philosopher, he's not alive anymore, Søren Kierkegaard. He died in 1855, so it's a couple of years ago. When you go to a teacher's training college in Denmark, or when you study to become a pedagogue, you work this way. So you work in these three levels. You say, you cannot cut your hair, you cannot cut that hair, stop it. So you're the adult, taking responsibility. But you also try to get on the same level as the person. And you allow yourselves sometimes to say that, yes, there are things I've done that were wrong, and I actually understand what you're doing in it. And I've done mistakes too. So you create a relationship on these three levels, not just as an adult, but as an adult. And you could say maybe even as a friend. So the idea is to work on these three levels. Now, to give you an insight of what this is, we would like to read the text, the original text in English. So bear with me if it's a bit difficult to read these words. It is called The Art of Helping, and it's written in Copenhagen in the 1840s. If one is truly to succeed in leading a person to a specific place, one must first and foremost take care to find him where he is and begin there. This is the secret in the entire art of helping. Anyone who cannot do this is himself under a delusion if he thinks he is able to help someone else. In order truly to help someone else, I must understand more than he, but certainly, first and foremost, understand what he understands. If I do not do that, then my greater understanding does not help him at all. If I nevertheless want to assert my greater understanding, then it is because I am vain or proud. Then basically, instead of benefiting him, I really want to be admired by him. But all true helping begins with the humbling. The helper must first humble himself under the person he wants to help, and thereby understand that to help is not to dominate, but to serve. That to help is not to be the most dominating person, but to be the most patient. That to help is a willingness, for the time being, to put up with being in the wrong and not understanding what the other understands. This is the most modern text you will find written in Danish. I know I read it in English. You can find it on the net, and it's called The Art of Helping. Now this could be, a bit too much, and you think, oh, it's just about love and helping. A recent survey in Denmark found that when you do work with social and emotional learning, when you talk about feelings, when you work with feelings, when you express your feelings, like Jana before, like some of you others, express your feelings, your worries, your fears. When you express that, when you train yourself in doing that, and do it with others, you heighten people get better academic results. This was published 2 days ago in Denmark. So you increase the academic results in building good relationships and making the children feel good. And I think that is the real spirit of the Nordic schools. And that is the thing that we would like to promote.